Hello, my name is Guy Morris, and I'm the founder of the Author Event Network. Author Event Network is an association of local Seattle and Portland authors who collaborate together to share space at major events, festivals, and fairs, to engage directly with our readers, to build our platform and our newsletter lists, and more importantly, to sell signed editions of our books. I'm here today with one of our authors, Irina Van Patten. Irina has an amazing, interesting story of her personal memoir of coming to America as a mail-order bride from Moldova. Hello, Irina. How are you today?
Oh, hello. Thank you for introducing me. This is
My
looking
pleasure.
good already.
My pleasure. You're looking good. You're looking good.
All right.
Well, tell us a little bit. You have an amazing story. I was always excited to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about your childhood in Moldova.
So just to put it on a geography where Moldova is, we are an Eastern European country that broke away from the Soviet Union. So we're a little, sandwich between Romania and Ukraine. So this is where my roots are. And we actually, in all honesty, we are a wine country. Everybody in my village has their own wine. My grandpa has their wine. My uncle has their wine. So we do appreciate fine dining and wine. And we dance like very close, our traditional dance is called hora, very close to Greek sirtaki. So we have a lot of flavors over there. So, but my childhood by itself, it has kind of a four components to it. My father died very young. He was 36. He was died of stomach cancer, and there was no cure at that time. Basically, not in that part of the world, that's for sure. I was like 5.5, maybe. So that kind of gave me a perspective that of mortality. We know that life is short, and I had to do something about my life later. Even when I was 6 years old, I was thinking about that, because I will eventually die, so I better, make sure that my life has some meaning. Yeah. So that's kind of a depth and perspective about that. At the same time, my mom had a very good job at a cafeteria, so we never starving, because it was it was a time of food shortages and other stuff, clothes, furniture, not mention even cars. That was just not going to happen. So I didn't feel that shortage of food. So we pretty much ate what we could get in our garden, especially that my mom was sending me every summer to my grandma. And she had her own garden, and we had to work it, because we had to pick the cherries, we had to pick the strawberries and raspberries, dig the potatoes. But I had everything I wanted from my garden, so I didn't feel the pressure of the state, this shortage, the deficit, and food supplies. At the same time, my grandma she taught me from very young, you have to be independent. You cannot depend on a man or depend on a state to take care of you. So it's kind of like, okay, so that's kind of in my mind. And then when my father died very early. She moved from the village. My mom moved us from the village to the capital, which was Chisinau at the time. And because she didn't have the resources, she lived into some community apartment, not even apartment, one room into the like a dorm kind of situation. So she had to sign me up for boarding school, which is not this fancy American school. It's like for low-income, single parents, orphans, boot camp, military style kind of situation. But I loved it because I was there on my own since the 3rd grade. So I'm feeling pretty sassy already at that time. So when I, graduated, I had all this kind of an independent spirit that the Soviet machine didn't kill, and it was right at the perfect time, because right at the time the Soviet Union kind of started fraying away in 85 when I graduated. So it kind of gave me a perspective to know, and an opportunity to know what was truly happening during the Soviet times and the gulags. And I found later that my grandpa was twice on a list to be deported to Siberia, and he twice escaped that by, in one case the war started, so they stopped the deportation. In the second case, just in the 50s, Stalin died. So that's how my family, till this day I'm thinking that it's a miracle that our family even exists, because many perished in Siberia, wilderness. So that was kind of my Moldova thing.
That's quite a family history. I think a lot of Americans would have a hard time relating to that, but I think a lot of people who are interested in Ukraine could certainly identify with some of that heartbreak as well. Well, what magic sparked in your heart that motivated you to change your life so much that you would go after an online romance with an American?
Wow, magic spark. That's the interesting part, because it was not like a spark where I was, getting interested. It was mostly out of necessity. So I was kind of looking at the situation, the country is in ruins, right? It was economic collapse after economic collapse. There's no jobs for us. So my opportunity when I was in my 20s was too young with 2 kids. What are my options? My options were to go where my mom was abroad, because at that time many thousands, I would say even millions, left to work abroad because there were no opportunities at home. And my mom worked as a caregiver in a house in Greece. So my option was to go there and basically be undocumented and do what she does. And at the same time, because so many people left, including men, there were not many available men around us at all.
Oh, okay.
So I would say it was 2 to 1 almost, the ratio. So
were they from the war, the gulags, or?
Well, most of them, died during the war. Then the drinking problem, the other problems, they all die young, before you even turn 40, and then the able male population left first when the Iron Curtain dropped. They left for work, for opportunities, for other things. So you have look around you. They already even married, or they're too young. They're not thinking about any serious relationships. So then I found about this online dating, and mostly like international dating. I knew nothing about it. I signed up for a dating agency with a very funny character who was managing that, and this is how I got in touch with an American. I didn't even at that time didn't consider Americans. It was too far. I'm someone in Europe, maybe an Italian, maybe Spaniard. So I was thinking more south, where it's nice and warm. Yeah. And then it just happened that he got in touch with me, and because our personality matched so much, because he loved to laugh and I loved to laugh, so it's kind of in a way that was kind of match made in heaven, though it was so many good lucks that had to happen, and as so many obstacles and circumstances went our way, that it kind of happened this way that I ended up here.
So what did your family think when you said, "Hey, I'm leaving the country, but I'm going to America, not for a job, for a boy"?
Wow, my mom was terrified, because she kept telling me all this horror story that could happen to me. So how do you know he's not a serial killer? So I do not know, Mom. He's coming across the world, probably not to just kill me. That is going to be an expensive, kill. Yeah. At the same time, you take a gamble. You take a lot of chances. You have to trust the person that takes you and has pretty much, I wouldn't say control in a controlling sense, but I came here with no money, $5 in my pocket, so I already understood that I would not have a way out if that doesn't turn well. So it is very difficult, just a gamble, but I think it's also I could not pass it up, because I was thinking, well, if I'm going to be afraid all my life, I wouldn't achieve nothing. So I had to take that risk and that step.
Wow, that's a lot of courage. That's a lot of courage. Well, tell us about your memoir, Mail Order Family.
And what comes to the mail order family is actually my story, how I came to America, and it explains a lot of our international romance, how the whole thing ended up to be. It is definitely a story but it's a sort of family resilience. How you never give up. No matter how you could die, you just find a way. You find a way, and then you find that way, and you find a person who is kind of matching. But then you always have this clash of personality, clash of cultures. You have to get along. You have to figure it out. It is definitely giving you not only a little bit of my culture, but me adapting to the American culture as well, trying to understand this part of the world as well as my fiance tried to understand my part of the world, and my family is like they will tell you how I feel. So it's like it is a very interesting meet. I'm assuming that David at that time he will find our culture very, very interesting and different from American as well.
For you, what do you think surprised you the most about American culture?
I think it surprises me to this day. It's the opportunities are everywhere. And I believe that a little bit, people who are born here just don't realize it or are taking it for granted, because look at me. Who knew? I am an American writer. I didn't even speak English until I was 27.
Doing a television interview, no less.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. So I didn't even speak English until 27. I only started learning it in college with 2 kids, night classes, just recently divorced. And at the same time, as I'm doing the classes and I'm working and doing other things, I was thinking that I need a degree, and English was like hot button at that time. But I'm thinking without that English, I would not be here, because I would probably wouldn't meet an American. They wouldn't be able to communicate with me if I wasn't speaking English. So the opportunities, if you apply yourself, you can literally do anything. And if that doesn't, end up well, maybe what do you try something else, do something different, just be adventurous, just do something. And that's the opportunity of this country, that you can try different things. You can fail and be okay. You fail, you get up, you can fail, you get up, and you until you find yourself. And I remember even when we arrived with the kids, the little circle around me, I saw the difference right away, because my daughter joined a choir, and I didn't think she would have an opportunity like that back home. My son joined all sports that he could find. So he was doing tennis, and he was swimming, and he was doing wrestling. And kind of in a way of giving back to the country that took us in. My son joined the Marines later, so it's all like, it's literally, I'm thinking it's like a movie that was not supposed to happen, but just turned out that way. So I think it's the opportunities that just don't pass them up, look them up, find your people, find your group of people that will support you, and break away from people who don't, and just use the opportunity that you can get.
Was there a moment or an event that made you think, I have to write a story about this?
Actually, the funny thing was that David himself, my fiance, started writing when I found his notes later after he passed, unfortunately. So I found his notes about his trip to Moldova, and said, I probably should, write my own thing. But it took years. It took years for me to start writing, and that only happened several years ago. So that memoir by itself, it took me 6 years to write, because I was looking for the right style, I was looking for the right tone and language, and I had to put it aside to write my other book. So it had to marinate a little bit. It's like in a good wine. let it sit for a while. They come back to it when you're ready. So it had to be written down, but I was looking for the right tone and the right language to do it, because I don't want it to be a depressing story. It's a lot of stuff that is sad, but I wanted to write in an entertaining and fun way, because I realized when I bring my papers to the writers group and I read it to a chapter or two, then they laugh when there is something funny happening, when we want to cry but you want to laugh at the same time. I think, wow, that is perfect. Because I like to laugh. David was a funny character. Why don't we just laugh at the whole thing? And at the same time, even now, when I tell people my story, they were not aware of any of that was happening in the 2000s, or didn't know, or find it intriguing but don't know many details. So I have an opportunity to give the American readers something about my culture, something about of the American culture that they didn't realize is something different and quirky and for the rest of the world. So I think that it was a combination of things, and at the same time, I found the right group of writers, the right group of people who helped me helped me through the writing process to kind of finish it and come into a book rather than bits and pieces and chapters and little notes.
Right.
So that was both.
Well, now I know your book is selling here in America. Have you has your book sell in Moldova at all? I mean, do you have an audience there?
Many are asking if I would translate because the English is not the first language there. So at that moment, I decided not to, because I specifically target the American audience. I want them to understand us. I want us to know each other. Don't think that I'm just an immigrant who are here to take something. We're here to give. We're here to give back to the country who took us in. We're here back to be, happy, and at the same time, it's a good opportunity for Americans to learn let's get to know each other.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking for now.
Now, I can't imagine there's too many Americans that speak Russian. What was your response from Americans knowing that you were coming from an ex-Soviet Union state? Was it welcoming, or what was your experience there?
Here? Yes, there is a large community, especially now with the war in Ukraine. There are a lot of Ukrainian refugees that are coming here. So there's a large community of Russian speakers in basically in the Soviet Union, not only Russian speaker was kind of a common language with other nationalities who live in the Soviet Union. For example, my first language is Romanian. I spoke at home Romanian, but my grandma is Ukrainian, so I'm kind of have a both of two worlds. I wouldn't say that I have a big neat community here. I'm not very selective. I'm not specifically looking to be only my people. I'm open to anybody who will talk to me. You're talking to me, I like you. So here we go. So I would say that it was like with any American. Hello. So that's that. I didn't see it being hostile, but that's the same like with everybody.
Tell us a little bit about your book, Welcome to America, Welcome Home. How is this different from Mail Order Family, and how did you go about writing this one?
So that book is a book based on an interview with 38 immigrants of different backgrounds, and I combined them by chapters to kind of address what we immigrants are dealing with when we go to a different country, in this particular case to the United States. And I talked about how kids adopt to the new culture. I talk how to go through your language barrier. Talk about how to know your rights. Talking about lawyers and stuff like that. And also there's a chapter about giving back. When you give back to your community, when try to support your community, once you made it, because that's a very important subject, not to forget where you come from, but not to forget to help other people, even if they're not from your community. I, for example, had refugees from Afghanistan in my house. I had refugees from Ukraine in my house. So I do right now give back. I feel that's a very important that we need to talk about. I had a lot of interesting people I talked to. I talked to a person who was in detention. He applied for asylum, and in this detention, he was put in detention. The process was very long. And then a community came together to pay his bail so he can be outside and wait for his case to go through. And then I talked to the lady who provided her house and sponsored him so he can stay in her house. So all of these great people, we need to know our heroes. So basically, why not? Let's talk to them. Let's find their stories. And at the same time, when we get to know each other, we understand each other better.
Tell us a little bit about how you see the war in Ukraine affecting Moldova.
In any way possible, because we are right at the border. I have relatives on both sides of the border and of the conflict. Luckily, not fighting each other, but it's very scary when one part is bombing another one, and the relatives on both sides. It's very complicated. My aunt still lives in Moscow, and she is very pro-Putin person, so it's making it difficult to communicate with her. At the same time, I cannot tell you how difficult the situation is, because it's affecting right immediately. In the first days of the war, Moldova took in 500,000 refugees, and we're a very small country, very poor, very little resources. Absolutely everyone was affected. Everyone was affected. by the amount of refugees are coming, and the sorrow and the grief that they are bringing. You cannot help but not see with their eyes what is happening right there. Not to mention that the Ukraine was attacked for absolutely no reason. That's making it even worse.
Yeah.
So we are absolutely will be supporting Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees with anything we can right now.
Well, I have time for one final question. Right. You joined Author Event Network this year. How has your experience been with that group, and how is that different from selling books without it? And what is your experience?
I love this experience because, first of all, you get a bunch of very interesting writers. Everybody has their style and their personality. So you get to be with them at the same table, and in the meantime, when you don't sell, you still have time to talk to each other. So you get to know each other. You get to have this camaraderie and sharing the resources and the knowledge. But I just love hanging out with my guys and girls because it's always fun. And even you don't sell anything. Oh, so what? We had a good day. It's just it's a fun experience. I definitely will be much harder to do it on my own, and much more boring.
Well, now you mentioned that you didn't sell anything, but I've been next to you. I see you selling a lot of books. You seem to be sort of a magnet for people.
Oh, thank you.
Well, people will walk by and you're flirting and say, "Oh, I love your dress. I love your hat. I love your shoes." And
I mean it. And I mean it because I'm really lucky to, and then the crowd to talk to people. I do not know where is it coming from, because it's just from out there. Oh my God, it's so cute. Actually, I noticed that I'm doing it now even without being at the events. I'm just going to say, "Oh, I like your shoes," and I hope they understood me correctly. I was the other day in the chiropractor office. Says, "Oh my gosh, I love your coat," and then we had to sit in a little area, look at each other, and she said, "Oh, thank you." She was so, because that just comes out, out naturally, I would say. And I was a very shy kid. You suspect that wasn't me when I was a kid. But I think I just discovered my adventurous side as I grew older. Or maybe I just don't give a shit anymore.
Well, in the final minute we have left, tell us a little bit about your dolls here.
Oh, so this two are from Moldova. Actually, that was my fiance who bought them at the market when he came to visit us, and I was.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, they were made by an artist who worked for puppet theater, and at that time all the industry collapsed. The theaters basically not working, so they were jobless. So he was making those dolls and selling them on the market. And I thought, well, I've seen them everywhere. Why do you need to buy them? But look at them. He bought them, and look, 20 years later, they are still here and looking fresh, and kind of reminds me of home. A little bit of tradition over there. I even remember my grandpa having the hat just like that.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, other than the Author Event Network events that we go to, where else can people find your books?
On Amazon or on my website at irinavanpatten.com. And I would love to, autograph if you if you wish to buy online, or meet us on the Author Events Network, right, wherever we are.
And we'll have about 25 different events this year, so I think they'll all around the city of Seattle and Portland. So I think if people are interested, they should be able to go to like Fremont Festival, U District, Marysville, Strawberry Festival, all kinds of different events that you'll be at. Well, Irina, thank you so much for coming today. It's always a joy to talk to you. You're always fun to be with. I've enjoyed having you as part of our group and sharing a tent with you. And I tell you, as soon as people hear that you writing a memoir of coming to America as a mail-order bride, especially the women, the eyes open, the smiles happen, the ears pick up, and you get a lot of attention. Thank you so much for your interesting story.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. We want to give our thanks to the Bremerton Public Access Television BCAT studio for the gracious time and wonderful staff in allowing us to be here. Our interviews will be published on Comcast Channel 12 or Astound Channel 3 on Saturdays at 5 p.m. We look forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye now.